Today in part 2, we want to focus on a bit deeper or more complex of an integration. So today we're going to show you how to take the Canary trending and dashboarding tool, Axiom, and actually faceplate it and use it to template your trending inside of an Ignition project. We're going to do a bit more with the data that's inside of Canary. We're going to build an asset model, run some calculations. And then finally, with that new data, instead of just pushing it back through the module as history, we're going to show you how to use MQTT Sparkplug and some of the Cirrus Link modules to actually publish that data back into Ignition as a tag provider instead of just a tag history provider. Now, today's training is going to be a bit more complex from the architecture standpoint than a basic application would be using the module for Ignition. So let's walk through this a little bit. Assuming that we have devices and Ignition Edge instances out on the edge, we've got that data coming back into our Ignition gateway. And so this entire left box represents my Ignition SCADA gateway. On that gateway, we've already installed the Canary module for Ignition, the Canary sender service. We've configured that module so that we're historizing data and publishing it across the network to a separate machine, which is our Canary Historian server. On that server is the receiver and the historian. So we're sending data from Ignition, historizing it out into the historian. And on the last training, we showed you how to configure the Canary Views service so that we can turn around and feed data back through the module into your Ignition project as a tag history provider. But today we're going to talk about two other components of Canary that we didn't cover previously. We're going to talk about our publisher service. And the publisher service reads data from the historian via the Views service again, but can publish a live stream of data via MQTT out to the Cirrus Link distributor module, which then paired with the Cirrus Link engine module will provide those new tags as tags into Ignition. And additionally, we have our Axiom application, an Axiom core installed on the Canary server, and we're able to put our Axiom client application embedded inside of Ignition so that, again, I can read history out of Views through the Axiom tunnel and supply it as a faceplate template inside of my Ignition publisher. All right, so that is the general architecture. I guess one thing I didn't cover when we talk about calculations and we talk about asset model, that's also, again, happening as part of the views. So we'll build some virtualized views of our historical data, make an asset model, and then inside of the Canary server, we'll run some calculations and then feed that both through Axiom and through Publisher. All right, so that's the overview. Let's go ahead and get started and get hands-on with this now. So just as a refresher, in the historian from our last session, we had been writing some data to a data set called Martin. And we did this using the Ignition module. And here were the tags that we were writing. So I've turned this back on for today's demo, and I've got some data for flow and current on these pumps and a couple of towers as well. If I take a look over at my actual designer project and look to my tags, there's the tags, pumps and towers, and there's the tags that I'm historizing. So if I'd like to read this data back through Axiom, then what I need first is to take an Axiom instance and supply it into my Ignition project. A real simple way to do that is to use the web browser component. And all I've done is dragged and dropped my web browser onto my screen. From there, I've simply set my starting URL to the proper URL for Axiom. So as a review, Axiom is a HTML-based trending and dashboarding tool that Canary has developed. It works in any modern web browser, and it works in iframes. To pull up Axiom, I just basically enter the address of the Canary Historian server. I am on this same machine today on my laptop as my historian, so I just need to hit localhost. Then from here, I'm able to browse and build charts. So if I want to open up an existing chart, I've already created one that is a blank chart. So it has no trends on it. It's just a ready to go, add a trend and get started chart. And I saved it with the name blank. When you save a chart, you'll see the URL actually carries that chart name in it. So in this case, I've copied that URL. I brought it back over to my project. And I've listed that URL with that chart referenced inside of my starting URL. So there it is. Localhost hash chart equals public blank. It loads the chart and there's my blank chart. Now, a really neat feature with Axiom is that I can actually provide more information inside of this URL beyond just calling a chart. If I look to my menu to the tutorials and look under chart tutorials, URL parameters, you'll see that I can also call a time of duration for the chart, a end time. I can call time mode and change whether the chart is in live mode or if it has been paused. And I can also reference both a single tag or multiple tags inside of this URL. Additionally, I can call a property called inactive timeout, which means if I don't have any cursor activity on the screen or any input activity on the screen, I can set a period of timeout and release the license for that Axiom client. So if I look through this URL parameter tutorial and click next, it will give me step-by-step examples on how to do these things. Time duration, so I just take the chart name, ampersand, time duration equals, and then put my interval. So this will set how much time I display on the Axiom chart. Time end equals, and then the date and time. So this would allow me to set an endpoint for my trend chart. Time mode equals pause, or time mode equals live. This controls whether or not I am streaming data in real time to the chart or if I'm just showing a historical paused chart. And then finally, chart name ampersand source tag equals, and then the tag path. If I want to add multiple tags, source tag equals tag path, and then and tag equals and second tag path. So we'll leave this up to reference in case we need it during this demo. But we're going to start by getting a single tag templated onto this chart. So I've already set my starting URL as just a blank trend chart. So my user, if they wanted to, could just come in here and search and add tags manually. So they could browse through all of the different nodes, find the data set, find the station, and then just add the flow tag in that manner. And that would be fine. But if we're really trying to faceplate or template this, then we need to do it in a maybe more simplistic way. So to do it that way, I'm going to want to use some scripting controls inside of Ignition. I've added a few buttons over here on the right. And the first is just going to be, let's just trend a single tag and we'll trend the flow tag. So if I hit Control J, that will bring up my scripting control within Ignition. And I can choose that if a user clicks on that button, instead of navigating, I can choose to set a property. And in this case, what I've done is I've changed the property of that web browser component starting URL to represent my URL for my blank Axiom application. And all I have to do now is add some details like time duration. What do I want it to be? We'll say 20 minutes. And source tag. And now give the tag path And if I've got that correct, and I hit OK and put myself into live mode, I should be able to click trend flow and see it load what I've asked it to load. There's the flow tag, and there's the 20-minute interval that I just set it to. I apologize for the tight zoom on this. Let's see if we can collapse a few things. There we go, a little better. All right, so now let's take it out of live mode and let's do the same thing for the amps. So same thing, we'll set the property. We'll pick our component. Take our URL. And we'll pull the URL for that chart. Source tag, this time instead of flow, I'm going to use the current tag. And then I can choose the duration. Let's stay with 20 minutes. Additionally, I could choose to time this out. Let's do an example of that. So inactive timeout, and then equal in the number of milliseconds. So if we just wanted to set it to 5 seconds, just for this demo. Let's see the trend amps now. Oh, I might have clicked too many times. There we go. So there's my amps. Now, right now I'm moving around on the chart, so I'm not giving it a chance to time out. And I'm consuming an Axiom license, but watch what happens when I move the mouse off the chart. In a 5-second period, we're going to get a timeout for inactivity. So that released the Axiom license that I was consuming and put it back in the pool of available Axiom license. Helps with license management. The end user, if they opened up this page and needed to see that again, would just hit reload. The license is now current for them again, and they would just pick the data they want to see. Okay, so what about, how do we do 2 trends on the same page? Let's switch over and we'll do trend both now. Not really too much more to do here. All I have to do is add that second tag, and that's just ampersand tag equals, and then we'll do the exact same path. We'll just do the current tag this time instead of the flow tag. And as you can see, I've picked up both tags, and this chart, since I didn't set a time, my preference is default to an hour in my own personal preferences for my trend chart. So just like that, I can create this scripting call, which means if you know your tag paths, and if you've noticed, it's the exact same tag path. I'm just putting the Canary server name at the front, localhost dot station01 dot pump01 current or flow. And so it becomes very easy to script this and use Axiom as a template for your tags. All right, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat for me, please, hitting the Q&A. And then at the end, we'll come back and answer those questions live for you. I should maybe mention an additional option that we see used quite often would be do the same scripting calls, but maybe use it as a pop-up window. So if I wanted to make a full page Axiom window, instead of treating it as a new window, I'd probably just treat it as a pop-up window and get that pop-up anytime someone clicks on one of my actions here. Okay, so let's take a look now at how we're going to publish data back into my Ignition gateway using MQTT. And let's go ahead and prep some data for that. So I mentioned that we were going to build out some asset models. I've done that work in advance just because we're trying to keep this to a 30-minute demo. So essentially, what we've done is we've taken a lot of these fictitious stations, pumps, and towers, and logged them into the historian into a series of data sets called Kamal, Guadalupe, Hayes, and Travis. And each of these has their own quirks, if you will. It could be the naming convention of the tags is a little different. It could be the number of pieces of equipment or the tag coverage per equipment is a little different. And so what we wanted to do was create a virtualized view of all of that data and put a standardization to it. And so we've asset modeled those existing tags in the archive and aliased them, pointing to their original archived locations, but creating a new set of tag names and a new set of structure for them. And that's exactly what this asset model does. It gives us a business name called Canary Water. It brings each of those 4 sections in as water districts. And then it presents the data with a level of station number first, then the pumps and the towers associated with those stations, and then some very common tag names inside of that. Once that work was done, then we went to our calculation service and built a series of calculations and outputted calculation tags based on those assets. So as an example, anytime that we have an asset type called a pump, if there is a tag on that pump measuring vibration, we are running a 30-minute time average of that vibration tag. And every 1 minute, we are outputting that as a new tag called vibration 30-minute average _ calc. So now, instead of just having the vibration tag in our system, if we look to this water district model and come to Kamal Station 1, Pump 1, I can see that I have that vibration tag. I also have all of these calculated tags that I've suffixed with calc available to me. So there is, let's look at a 7-day picture here and see what this looks like. So for 7 days, the red tag is the actual vibration, and the blue tag sitting on top of it is the 30-second average. If we look at it for the last 4 hours, we'll see a very different picture based on the data. All right, so if we want to take these new calculations and these new asset models and inject them back into Ignition, I could always read the tag history with Ignition. I would have no problem just throwing an easy chart on here and essentially, let's just do it real quick, and browsing to pull tag history. That's pretty simple to do. So because we've essentially created Canary as a tag history provider, I can browse that water district model, the asset model, and I could come in and I could find Pump 1, and I could bring in the history on any of those tags, whether they were originally Ignition tags or not. But that's just to history. With Ignition, I can't power things, all the controls with just history. So for instance, if I wanted to express a live value as a numeric label, well, I need it to be an available tag to me. So how do we do that? We're going to use the MQTT distributor and engine modules, and we're basically going to publish a stream of data to distributor and then read it via engine. To accomplish that, we'll use the Canary publisher feature. So I'll begin by configuring a new publisher stream. And I can choose between either a WebSocket over JSON or MQTT Sparkplug to accomplish this. And we're going to use MQTT Sparkplug. I've given the group ID by default, the name Canary, the node ID publishing, and the device ID service, but we could configure this to our needs. For our demo, we'll leave it alone. All I need to do now is look into the Canary Historian, browse the views that I'd like. I'm going to publish the water district. And then if I wanted to continue to isolate down to maybe a specific series of tags, I could, or I could just say publish everything. For this case, we'll just publish everything. The last piece that I need to do is come over to my distributor and engine and properly configure those pieces. For this demo, I'm going to just allow non-secure port 1883 to be used, but I could certainly enable TLS and use 8883, set a username and password, and follow those types of practices. But because I've left 1883 open, and because I'm actually local to my Ignition gateway, I don't have to really configure anything here at all. So we are going to choose to publish in a what we would call our stream. So we are not going to do a durable stream. We're just going to do on update. We're capable of updating more than 100,000 new records per second. So I'm not worried about scalability on this. The other option is durable stream, and durable stream wouldn't be appropriate for this use case. If you want to learn more about Publisher, we do have modules available that will teach you this technology, but it's a bit outside of today's scope. All right, so let's apply this. Let's come into the status, and we'll simply enable. We're now enabled, we're connected, and we've got 915 tags currently publishing over to the distribution module from Cirrus Link, which means that now if I look at, there's distributor, if I look at the engine, which I've already configured to read distributor, and look to my edge nodes, there's Canary, publishing, service, there's the water show district, there's Canary Water, there are all 4 of my districts, station 1, pump 1, let's grab that vibration tag. Vibration, 30-minute average calculation. Now we can drag that over. And we have data coming in live. And this will continue to update every 30 seconds. This is a great way to take data that's not naturally in Ignition and get it back into Ignition using Sparkplug MQTT. All right, with that will conclude the demo of the 3 items that we wanted to show you today. If you have any more questions, you can email us info@canarylabs.com or reach out to us directly if you've already been engaging in a conversation with us.